Join me today as we talk about Castlevania Nocturne Season 2 on Netflix. This is the Geek Cabal channel. My name is Bobbie, and today we're going to be talking about Season 2 of Castlevania Nocturne on Netflix. It's out now. I've watched all the episodes. Before we get into spoilers, overall I thought it was good. Animation's still pretty top-notch. The 4 seasons of the regular Castlevania series and the first season of this definitely don't disappoint on the animation front. I do still have some quibbles with some of the plotting, and I'll get to that in the spoilers section, where I'm not so sure what the creators are really trying to say, or if their knowledge of history is very good, because it seemed to be supporting some things that were objectively awful. So we'll get to that. So who is our cast of characters here? We have Richter Belmont, who's the latest member of the Belmont clan, out fighting vampires, fighting the good fight. We have Annette, who is a girl from the Caribbean, who also has powers, fighting vampires, and has come to France. Maria, who is Tara's daughter. She also has magic powers, and fight the vampires and the night creatures and things. She can summon animals from some other dimension and kind of control them. Tara, that's her mother, has kind of elemental based powers. At the end of the last season, she was transformed into a vampire. We have Mizrak, who is a knight of some kind for the church. He's with the abbot, who was somewhat in league with Erzabet, who's been making night creatures. And he's kind of a man questioning his faith and everything, and also kind of has a relationship with Ulrox, who is an Aztec vampire. Both of them are men, and they don't seem to shy away from that part of the relationship, more the he's a knight and the other one's a vampire part. So then, like I said, Ulrox, Aztec vampire, can turn into a big, Quetzalcoatl looking snake thing. We have Drolta, who was the main vampire servant of Erzabet Bathroy, who was killed at the end of the last season. We have Edward, who was also from wherever Annette said she was from. And he was transformed into a night creature, but has retained his sentience and his mind and everything, instead of becoming, a demon from hell like every other night creature. And then we have Erzabet Bathroy, who, I have to look it up. I could have sworn that, the person she's based on, his name is Elizabeth Bathroy, but maybe I'm wrong. She's the main big bad, the big vampire who is trying to, absorb the divinity of Sekhmet, the Egyptian goddess. And she has partially absorbed it and creates an unnatural eclipse at the end of the last season. Then we have Alucard, who is Dracula's son from the main series. And then Juiced, I don't know how his name's pronounced, Belmont, who's an old man, kind of helps Richter out a little bit, and also knows a little bit about the old vampire hunting. And then Sekhmet, we do meet her at one point. So, like I said, overall, animation's good, storyline's good. Didn't feel like there was a whole lot of filler material. Felt pretty to the point. Almost to the point of, I'm not so sure where they'd go with the season 3 if there's going to be one. So, however, the events of the first series tell me that what happens towards the end of this one isn't exactly a hindrance to making another season, so we'll see. But yeah, that's most of what I can say without really just going into major spoilers. So if you're checking out now before the spoilers, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I appreciate it. But now we're going into the spoiler area, so here we go. So it starts off pretty much where we left off in season 1, as I recall. And the eclipse ends. Erzsebet is very drained from creating the eclipse. And she finds out from the abbot that one of the night creatures he created still has its soul and everything. Well, maybe not its soul, but still has its mind and everything. And so she has the abbot put Drolta into the machine, and it's not sure it'll work because she's a vampire and soulless, and so the whole thing basically like turns humans into night creatures. And he kind of assumed that like having a soul is an important part of all that. So he does it, and she resurrects as a night creature, although still similar looking to how she was. You know, now she's got the wings full time, and but she's herself. So so she's brought back, and since she's now a night creature, she's no longer vulnerable to sunlight. So she can fly around out in the sun. And as the series progresses, we get her backstory. She was a priestess of Sekhmet, and all of her fellow priestesses and whatnot were all killed by a vampire, and she's able to pin the vampire to a wall and then decapitates the vampire and drinks a bunch of its blood to turn herself into a vampire, so then she can become an immortal servant for Sekhmet. And she keeps trying to find someone who can take Sekhmet into themselves and become Sekhmet, so Sekhmet will walk the earth once again. So she's trying to do this by finding other vampires or turning them and having them drink Sekhmet's blood. But it always ends up with them just exploding because Sekhmet was a goddess. So, you know, she's very powerful and their bodies just can't contain it. That's when she comes across Erzsebet and offers her a way out, because she knows the clock's ticking, because the local folk have figured out that she's killing people and bathing in their blood to maintain her eternal youth. So what was her name again? Drolta turns her into a vampire. And then slowly, over the course of, I think it said 175 years, she drinks a little bit of Sekhmet's blood year after year to build up her power and to build up the tolerance until finally she consumes a lot of it. And then it notably increases her powers, and she survives the process. So now they're trying to find the mummified body of Sekhmet, because it got lost at some point, because it contains her heart, which contains another part of her soul. So our band of heroes are also trying to find it to destroy it. And so Drolta is able to outmaneuver them and gets it and brings it to Erzsebet, who consumes it and then becomes even more powerful. So their only option is the third part of her soul, which is in the Egyptian afterlife somewhere. And this is where Annette's powers come into play, because she can talk to the spirits, and she realizes that this is what they've been trying to tell her to do. So she meets her god, who gives her some newfangled weapons and sends her to find Sekhmet. And then Sekhmet possesses her body in the real world, and her spirit is trapped in the Egyptian afterlife, fighting off, I don't remember the name of the crocodile that eats your heart, but that's what's there, basically. Like a kind of demonified version of that. So she's dealing with that while Sekhmet is in her body trying to reclaim the other 2/3 of her soul. So while all this is happening, the French Revolution is going on, and Alucard goes to talk to Robespierre and the council, or whatever the hell they were called, to try to explain to him, hey guys, you're gonna want to like get organized because there's some vampire badness coming your way. And so this is the part I was talking about. If you know anything about history, you know that Robespierre and his people were just bloodthirsty tyrants, and they ultimately got what was coming to them, but they were not what you would call reasonable people. And the fact that they're presented in any way other than monstrous here is, in my opinion, a failing of the show. French Revolution killed a whole hell of a lot of innocent people. So, yeah, like even making that look even remotely rational, which the show kind of goes out of its way to do. Like, no one's really like, hey, maybe we shouldn't just be lopping a bunch of people's heads off. Like, this could end badly. You know, every step of the way, it's like, oh, viva la revolution. It's like, you know, I actually do know history, and like, this doesn't end well for any of you. So maybe that's where season 3 is going to go, is where like reality is going to finally smack them in the face. But who knows? But yeah. So so then you also have Maria, who's having to deal with the fact her mother's now a vampire. Tara's having to deal with the fact that, yes, she's a vampire, but she's not a soulless monster. And she does still love her daughter, but she also realizes that she's already having a negative influence on her, and so she leaves so her daughter can come into her own without her influence, and so that she can figure out what she is going to have to do with her newfound immortality. Her daughter starts to go towards the dark side, so like the creatures she's summoning are more and more dark and evil looking, but she gets that under control eventually. Then Juiced, the old man Belmont, he gets his mojo back, gets his magic back, and he starts fighting with them too. Then Edward, finds a couple of the other night creatures that still are themselves, and they rebel against the other night creatures and take all them out and start fighting the vampires and whatnot. So Erzsébet's having to deal with like a mini revolution within her own camp. And eventually it comes down to when Ulrox finally decides that he actually does love Mizrak and is willing to risk his life to come and save him in the big final battle, because Mizrak is horribly outclassed. And so he shows up to fight Drolta to try to save Mizrak, and ultimately helps defeat her and Erzsébet in the end. So Drolta ultimately betrays Erzsébet, because Erzsébet loses an arm and gets pretty banged up, and Drolta's just kind of like, you know, I thought you could be Sekhmet, but you're not Sekhmet. Like, I should have been Sekhmet all along. And so she drains the life force out of Erzsébet into herself to become more powerful, and then everyone just kind of gang piles on her, and Sekhmet is able to unite all the parts of her soul in Annette's body, which then leaves Drolta. She's still powerful, but she's not goddess level powerful, so they toast her. And then you see him burning all the bodies at the end, so like Erzsébet and Drolta and all of them are incinerated and they're done. Then you have Richter tells Ulrox that he's going to kill him. He's like, but not today, because Ulrox did kill his mom. So, you know, he does want him dead. But he realized that he helped, so whatever. Ulrox ends up turning Mizrak because he's dying, and, you know, Mizrak's convinced that he's going to go to hell, and Ulrox is like, oh, it's easy to cheat the devil. And so he turns him, and so the two of them end up together. Then, yeah, a couple people stay there in France to be part of the glorious revolution, and some others head back to the New World. And that's kind of where everything ends. So, like I said, I don't really know where a season 3 would go, because this is kind of like after season 2 of the main series, where Dracula was destroyed. And so now, where do you go? And so they went with, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, the female vampire there that had ambitions of basically replacing Dracula. Whereas here, I mean, you've got Tara, she's still alive. You've got Olrox, but like everyone in the big bad's camp is pretty well dead. So there's no like lieutenant floating around or anything. So I don't really know where you'd go with it. But overall, I liked the show overall. Like I said, I just have some issues with what they appear to be promoting, and I'm just wondering if it's just massive historical ignorance, or if they genuinely think that like the French Revolution was a good thing, in which case then it's just massive ignorance or stupidity, because no, it really wasn't. A hell of a lot of innocent people ended up losing their heads, literally, and then finally the revolutionaries lost theirs, and they weren't a whole lot better off at the end of it than they were at the start of it, I'm given to understand. So it was basically just a reign of terror where a bunch of people were killed for no good reason. And that's not a positive thing. So, yeah, if that's what the show's going for here, then yeah, no, don't think so. But, yeah, I mean, but that's all background stuff. For the most part, that's just kind of like the circumstances in which the show is occurring. So again, I wonder why it's set there, but whatever. Overall, though, show's decent. Fight scenes are great. Dialogue's pretty good. The voice acting's pretty good, and looks fantastic. So I do recommend watching it, especially if you liked the first Castlevania series, or if you saw the first season of this series. And if you don't know anything about the French Revolution, then you can safely ignore all that. But yeah. So anyway, let me know what you folks think down in the comments. Have you seen the other season? You're going to watch this season? Have you watched this season already? Where do you think they'd go with a season 3 if they made one? Whatever. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Sharing and commenting would help us grow the channel. We always appreciate it. But yeah. Other than that, just I don't know. Keep an eye out for vampires. Keep a whip handy. Like, find someone named Belmont if you ever got to fight Dracula. Something like that. See you folks later.